Hi, I'm Apple, and I just started working as a secretary at a big company. I was thinking about how great this job was compared to my old babysitting job. Gosh, I didn't miss changing all those stinky diapers. One time, I was emptying that family's trash, and the bag burst open, and the diapers full of poop went everywhere. It was so disgusting. And that's when the idea came to me. Why did people not reuse diapers? What if there was a diaper delivery service? You could order clean diapers, someone would come pick up the dirty ones, and you'd never have to deal with cleaning them yourself. Genius. And imagine if there was an app for it. It was a brilliant idea. So I sat and wrote a whole business proposal for it and called it Diaper Daddy. I told my boss about it the next day, and you won't believe what he said to me. Kaylee, did I ask you for your ideas? No, I didn't. You've been hired specifically to do whatever I ask of you, and right now, I'm asking you not to pretend that you have a brain for marketing, because you don't. Got it? I thought he'd at least think it was a good idea. The next day, I saw the CEO and my boss having a meeting in the glass meeting room next to my desk. On the projector was my proposal. I couldn't believe it. It was my idea. He'd stolen my Diaper Daddy app idea. The whole time he was presenting, he kept looking at the CEO and smiling. It was sickening to watch. He was such a suck-up, and the CEO loved everything about the idea. After the meeting, he emailed him straight away and offered him a $10 million deal if he could create the app and get it up and running within a month. I sat there flabbergasted. That $10 million deal should have been mine. I knew my boss probably assumed I'd freak out and ask him why'd he taken my idea, but I decided to do something else instead. Something he wouldn't be expecting. The next day, the CEO had arranged for an app development team to come in and talk about the diaper deal. I told my boss the meeting was scheduled for 1:30 p.m., when actually it was scheduled for 1 p.m. It was one of our colleagues' birthdays that day, and I'd brought in 2 giant helium-filled balloons. 5 minutes before the meeting, I decided it'd be fun if we inhaled some of the helium. I knew my boss was always up for a laugh, so I gave him some too. After he'd inhaled it all, I saw the look of horror cross his face when he noticed the app team arriving. Oops, my bad, I said. The meeting is actually now. In the meeting, my boss stood up to introduce his idea, and as he spoke, his voice came out all high-pitched and squeaky like Mickey Mouse. The CEO looked horrified, and the whole app team burst out laughing. Then he whispered in my ear, begging me to explain the idea, but then I said, "What idea are you talking about?" Even though my boss was embarrassed, he couldn't control his laughter. Even when he tried to stop, I sat there almost peeing myself with laughter at how brilliant this was. Afterwards, my boss came marching out of the meeting room and went straight to me and screamed, "You're fired." He said he'd never been so humiliated in all his life and that I was to leave the building right now. I told my boss, "You'll regret this," and threw whatever was on my desk into a box I found on the side and headed home. First, he'd stolen my idea, and now he'd fired me? What a horrible man. I took my stuff out of the box and saw something I recognized straight away. It was my boss's phone. But what was it doing in this box? I must have put it there by accident when I swiped the desk clean. Of course, like every secretary out there, I knew my boss's passwords. I glanced over my shoulder almost as if I thought my boss would suddenly appear. I slid the screen up and almost peed my pants for the second time that day. His screensaver was a My Little Pony photo. Maybe his daughter did that, I thought. But then I reminded myself he didn't have a daughter. I clicked onto the gallery to see what other photos he had, and just as I did, the phone started to vibrate. Someone was calling. It was his mom, and she was named Mommy Dearest. I almost choked. This was too good. I answered but didn't say anything. "Where is my sweet potato? Hello? Are you deaf? It's after 6 p.m. now. Hurry home or you'll be sent to bed without dessert." I had to hang up quickly for fear that she'd hear me laughing. Who was my boss? All of a sudden, he felt like a complete stranger to me. I mean, he's like 50 and lives with his mom. I started flicking through his messages and started reading his conversations with his mom. "Mom, your room stinks and your bubble bath is ready. If you don't come home now, I'll tell your papa about your pony order that just arrived. Also, I told you to stop buying these damn toys. You're a big boy now." Me, "Never again, Mama, I promise." So weird. What a loser he was. And then I saw something absolutely unbelievable. In his gallery, there was a whole album of photos called Me and My Soulmate. I didn't even know he had a girlfriend. I tried to open the album, but it was locked. Damn. The next day, I woke up early and went to work. Sure, I'd been fired, but that wasn't going to stop me. I walked into the office and everyone stared in shock. Yeah, Kaylee's back, folks. Stare all you like, I thought. My boss looked up and asked me, "What on earth do you think you're doing here?" Instead of responding, I just flashed his phone, winked at him, and took my old seat. Once everyone had calmed down, I turned to him and said, "Hey pony boy, I'd like a latte with almond milk please and a blueberry muffin." And then I watched as his face turned beetroot red. This was priceless. He ignored me, so I spoke up again. "Hey, pony boy, I'm talking to you. Get me a latte now. Or would you rather I gave Mommy Dearest a call, 5 minutes later, there was a latte in my hands and a delicious blueberry muffin. Wow, is this what it felt like to be the boss? I was taking a sip when he came right up to me and whispered into my ear for me to give him the phone right now, or he'd report me. I almost spat out my latte. Report me to who exactly? I just gave him a smirk and turned back to my laptop. After an hour, I decided I needed to flex my muscles a bit more. I told him we're swapping desks, and then when he didn't react, I just started moving my stuff to his desk. He tried to object, so at the top of my voice, I said, "Sweet potato, I'm warning you." And suddenly, he started moving things off his desk at lightning speed. This was amazing. "Call me boss," I told him. And then at lunchtime, I asked him to go buy me lunch. I ordered 10 pizzas, a dozen donuts, and made him go collect it all and bring it to my desk. Watching him scurry along like my little slave was such a great moment. He was my secretary now. I was officially Boss Kaylee. He tried so hard to get his phone back, even offering me the $10 million deal that was rightfully due. But I wasn't done having fun. I watched over the next few days as he started panicking about getting the app up and running. Every time he had a meeting with the CEO, I'd schedule a delivery from Amazon to be delivered to the meeting room. I could see the CEO getting annoyed, and on the 4th day of this happening, he asked him to open the package. I think he thought it would be something for the app, but when my boss pulled out a pink, sparkly My Little Pony, I literally almost died laughing. I could hear my boss mumbling something about how it was a gift for his niece. Ha! Yeah, right. By the end of the week, I was really having fun being his boss. I even made him order fresh flowers for my desk every day. Throughout the whole week, I tried every password imaginable, but I still couldn't access the locked album. And then I realized it was tied to his Google account, and I could just click Forgot Password and be asked a security question. Of course, the question would be, what is your favorite character? So I asked him, so which pony is the best pony in your opinion? And then he just told me. I could barely contain my excitement. Princess Twilight Sparkle. I typed it in, changed his password, and then I was in. I couldn't believe my eyes. There were hundreds of photoshopped photos. All of them were of my boss and our CEO. In one photo, they were riding atop a My Little Pony, flying through rainbows and clouds. And then there were photos of them at the beach and on a mountain, all with My Little Ponies. And all photoshopped, of course. Oh my gosh, I was stunned. So my boss was in love with our CEO? No way. I didn't even realize how much I was laughing. But my boss asked me what was so funny, and then he realized, and he lunged for his phone. But I quickly pulled it away. "I know your secret," I said, grinning. Literally within the blink of an eye, he'd packed up all his stuff and left. He didn't look embarrassed as he left the office. He actually looked hurt, and I swear I saw him crying as he walked out. This whole time, I'd wanted to be the boss, and yet now, I suddenly felt bad. I used his phone to track down his address and then jumped in a taxi. In the taxi, I started reading some of the messages between him and the CEO, and it was clear they liked each other. When I got to his house, his mom let me in, and I found him curled up on his bed crying like a little kid. Wow, he was really upset about all of this. When he saw me, he told me to go away, but I went over to him, and when I sat down, he started crying even more, saying for years he's been in love with the CEO, but what's the point? It's not like he would ever love him back. Suddenly, I found myself saying, I'm sure the CEO liked him too, and that I'd seen the way he looked at him. There was definitely love in his eyes. I apologized to him for everything I'd done, and he said it didn't matter, that nothing mattered if he couldn't be with the CEO. Just before I left, I texted the CEO from his phone, asking him to meet for a drink to celebrate the deal, and then I put his phone next to his bed and said goodbye. I waited outside the bar for a whole hour until I saw them meeting. And they looked so happy together. They were chatting nonstop, and I felt like I'd done something good. The next day at work, my boss told the CEO that it had been my idea. I immediately got promoted. As for the CEO and my boss, They are dating in secret at the moment, but I can tell they're happy. I know my boss only took my idea to impress him, and anyway, I think we're pretty even now. In fact, we're actually pretty good friends now after I bought him a limited edition Princess Twilight Sparkle to say sorry for everything I did to him.
Hello, everybody. My name is Heidi. I'm 16 years old, and I've got 2 mothers. How is that even possible? Let me tell you. It's a long story. I was actually born in Boston, and my mother had a really difficult delivery. I was all right, but she lost a lot of blood and slipped into a coma. The doctors couldn't manage to find either my father or any of my other relatives, and they couldn't make any predictions about my mother's condition either, so they had no option but to give me to a foster family. They agreed that I would live with them until my mother woke up from her coma, if she did. But years went by. I turned 6 years old, but it still hadn't happened. My foster mom and dad didn't tell me that I wasn't their real daughter, so I lived a happy life with my beloved mommy and daddy in a small town in Minnesota. I couldn't have wished for a better family until it was my father's birthday, and we had a big party at home with all of our friends, a barbecue, and fireworks. We were having so much fun. My father's phone was ringing off the hook because there were so many people who wanted to wish him a happy birthday. But then there was another call. My father picked up his phone merrily, expecting another greeting. But then the smile was wiped from his face. He went pale. I was really worried, but he said that everything was fine. After the party, my parents went to their room and shut the door. I tried to eavesdrop, but I couldn't make out what they were talking about because they were whispering. But then my mom burst into tears. That was far too frightening for me, so I knocked on the door and asked my parents to let me in and to tell me what was going on, and then they told me the truth. They told me about my real mother and her coma and about the phone call. My foster dad was informed that my mother had woken up from the coma, and after a little treatment, she would be able to have her daughter back as agreed. I was absolutely dejected. I begged my parents not to give me back. I think I'd cried my eyes out, but there was nothing we could do about it. So, in a couple of weeks, my parents took me back to Boston. My real mother met us at the airport. She looked very nice and friendly, and she immediately started crying when she saw me, but I didn't feel anything at all. I was squeezing my foster mom's hand and didn't want to let it go. We all went to a cafe and walked around town. My mother tried to make conversation with me, but I never said a word. Soon the moment to say farewell had come. My parents spent one night with us, but when I woke up in the morning, they were not there. There was only a little note on the table. It said, "Always remember." And there was a little picture of us all together. So I was left alone in that new city with that unknown woman who I was supposed to call Mom now. She brought me to my new home, which was really cozy, and there was a separate room for me with a bed and new clothes and toys. My mother did her best to get along with me. She cooked, showed me around town, took me to the zoo. She would buy me anything I would ask for. And I started to like her, actually, but I really missed my family. Once I worked up the courage and asked her if I could go visit my home in Minnesota, but she wouldn't let me. She said that she realized it was hard, but it would be better for me not to communicate with my foster mom and dad for my own good. She said we had to turn over a new leaf together. I got really mad. I wanted to go home so badly that I decided to run away. I packed my little suitcase and headed for the hills. I Googled the way to the bus station. It happened to be not that far away from the place we lived. Of course, I got caught and brought back after I'd tried to buy a one-way ticket to my hometown. My mother was in despair, and she made the worst decision ever. She decided to move to another state in the South without even letting my foster family know about it. It turned out that my grandparents lived there, but my mother hadn't spoken to them for years. They knew nothing about her coma or about me. She also forbade me to call or to email my foster mom and dad and wouldn't give me their contact information. The only thing I had was that family picture. Even though it looked like a happy ending, my grandparents were so happy to see me and to finally make up with their daughter after so many years. I never stopped thinking about my family in Minnesota. It's been a while. I became a teenager, I went to school, and I had a lot of friends there. I loved my grandparents to bits, but not my mother. She was strict, and I was never allowed to do anything. I wasn't a good student, and she would always punish me for bad grades. We had fights and arguments all the time. I started to hate her, and for me, she still remained the person who had taken me away from my beloved foster parents. I didn't know anything about them. There was no way that I could contact them. I sent paper letters to my home address in Minnesota hoping that they would be delivered, but I never got an answer. I didn't want to believe that the people who loved me and cared about me for so many years could forget about me so easily. There must have been something that was preventing them from writing me back. And I thought my mother was the one to blame. I thought things couldn't get worse until that day. My friend told me he was throwing a slumber party because his parents had gone away, so he invited me and all my friends over. I asked my mom if I could go, but of course I got a no. She said I had to improve my grades first, then I could think about parties.